And when you're writing the final part of the letter, don't make this silly mistake. Hi everyone, I'm a chartered structural engineer in the UK with over a decade of experience, and I passed my IStructE exam a few years ago. In this video, I will be basically responding to section 1B of the past paper, February 2023, question 4, and I'll be just going through the question and other main points that I learned when practicing for my exam, and also the main mistakes or errors that people tend to make, specifically section 1B for this video. In the past video, I went through the section 1A in the exam, and this is a continuation of that video, going through section 1B, which is basically the letter from the client. Now I'm going to go through a few important points. First, it would be a great idea to read section 1B, the question, before you start responding to section 1A, which is a conceptual design. The reason is because section 1B will give you an idea of the actual structure the examiners are expecting. Sometimes the question tells you to avoid a column in a certain location, or it asks you to design the building in a certain way, and it's just very useful to read that question before you start responding to the conceptual design, because it gives you an idea of what is actually expected or what would be the best solution for this case. It's not always the case, but I just find it very useful when I was preparing for my exam. Now, the second thing is that it will always be incredibly useful to have a template for the letter, even if, of course, the question or the request from the client will change. But there's a few things that will be repeated, like the introduction or the final part, and in the exam it's very long, it's 7.5 hours, and that means that you'll be very tired. And every time that you can just templatize something so that you don't have to think about what you're going to say or write, it just makes your life so much easier. It makes you less tired by the end of the exam. So my very first suggestion is to have a template, and then even better, several templates for when the client asks you to do a change after it's been built. Template 1 is to do a change before it's been built but after design. They were very useful to me. When I was doing past papers in exam conditions, writing the actual day of the exam made me think that I was in the exam, and also it means that when I'm in the exam I'm already used to that date and I can write that same date straight away. And one important thing that I don't think people think that is important, but this will actually give you a few points to write the letter in the formal letter format. So the format that you write should be a formal letter. That means having your date at the top, address, where is it being sent, this letter, and then who is it being sent to. Makes it look tidy and organized, which of course always impacts on how the examiner will perceive your letter. It shows that you know how to write a formal letter. And very, very important to highlight, because it's one of the key reasons why people fail these questions, is that to note the timeline of the letter. So as I mentioned before, it's very important to know if the letter is being sent before the construction, after the design has been completed, or after the building has actually been built, because the implications and the advices that you will give, of course, are different. So what has happened a lot is that people don't read the question properly. In this question, the section 1A says that after you have completed your design, the client informs you that a clear column-free distance of 22 meters is required at level 1 on the east side external face of the building to facilitate the movement and display of large objects during exhibitions. And then asks us, write a letter to the client explaining the design and construction implications and advising how the design could be modified to suit the new requirement. Now, after I wrote the introduction of the letter, we're going to actually go to the design recommendations and the implications of it. But before we go there, I would like to highlight one of the most important things that I think you should remember in this section, and is that I would just recommend to not do sketches. And the reason is because this part of the exam only counts for 10 marks, and sketches will make it just take longer, and time is very constrained in the exam, so the fastest that you can respond to this question, the better. Doing sketches will just take you longer, and it's not such an important part of the exam. It needs to be responded because you have to respond to all sections, but the marks are not as high as other sections. So the idea is not to spend so much time in this section. So now let's go into the letter. So first I will set out all the alternatives that I can think of on how to achieve this. In this case, because they want a clear column-free distance of 22 meters to the east side, then I thought of 3 alternatives. The first one could be a large transfer beam or any other transfer structure that will be on the east side elevation to support the middle column that we already had shown in our section 1A. So at higher levels, there's this column right in the middle that will need to be supported by a transfer beam, and I'm setting that as an alternative. The second alternative is the layout of the building could be updated so that on the east side the columns are spaced to allow for that 22 meters column-free clearance, which means that you'll have bigger beams, but there will be no transfer structure. You'll avoid the transfer structure. Then the final alternative that I could think of is to replace the columns with hangers. It's a bit more creative solution, and I think even if you're not planning to really recommend that to the client, it's good to highlight that you thought of it, like there's that alternative that you know about, and it's just to replace the columns with hangers from the roof truss. So you'll have the edge of perimeter columns, then the roof truss, and then the middle columns. In those locations where you need the column-free area, you just put hangers to support the floors instead of column supporting on the foundation directly. Once you have set out the alternatives, then I would like to finish with a sentence recommending one of the alternatives, which is normally the most simple and sensible and efficient. And once you have chosen an alternative to recommend to the client, then I will just write about the implications of this change or of this alternative and how they will affect the design that we already have, and how it will affect, well, other items or other subjects, disciplines in the project. And because in this case I suggested the second alternative, which is updating the column layout, would be the one that is the most efficient and the one that I recommended, then I advise of the structural implications of this change. First, I think the columns and beams on the east side of the building will need to change, and probably they will need to increase in size because you will need to resist an increased load from the larger span that it will be 22 meters. The second thing is in section 1A, they had told us the 70%, I think it was 70% or a large percentage of the facade at the first floor needed to be glazed. And that means that the glazing support in this area will need to change. I just highlighting because we're changing the structure, wherever the glaze or the glazing manufacturer or specialist was planning to fix the glazing to, it will need to change because we're changing the structure arrangement and it might just affect the glazing. And finally, I say that because the loads in the columns from the beams will be increased, then it's possible that the foundations will need to be bigger to resist this additional load. No calculations have been done. We don't have to really do calculations for this area, just to highlight the possibility that it could change, and that could be one of the implications. Once I finish with the structural implications of the changes, then very briefly I highlight the economical implications, because of these additional changes basically will require some redesign, which will affect first the program. It might just take longer to finish the actual design and before they can start on site for construction. And the second part is the budgeting or the financial part. There will be additional fees because of these changes. The whole idea of the letter is that you try to be very helpful to the client and that they understand that there will be some fee implications, but the part of the fee implications is the least important. The most important is how you're going to solve it, what changes are going to be, and the implications of these changes. So you have to be, let's say, very optimistic and very helpful towards the client, which is what you actually have to do in real life, not only in the exam, of course. And when you're writing the final part of the letter, don't make this silly mistake. It seems that a lot of people have written their name at the end of the letter when they write in the signature. Do not do that. If you write anything that can identify you, your name, your surname, your candidate number, your IStructE registration number, anything, it's just going to be a direct, straight away failure. If there's anything in the exam that can identify you so it stops being anonymous, you will fail directly the exam. So do not write your name in your signature. And basically that's it. That section won't be completed. But I like to include in the end of my signature that I'm already a chartered engineer, just for, I guess, positivity, and also because I think that the examiner might find it inspirational, funny, who knows, they might not like it. But anyway, that's how I did it. I don't think everyone should do that, because if many people do it, then the examiner might notice it and might not like it, because it will look like a templatized answer. And when it looks like a templatized answer, they'll just reduce the points they give you. I would suggest that you use your own signature, however you want to use it. And that's it for this video. And for next video, I will respond the section 2C, which is the design calculations for the elements of the building. I will do the calculations of the building, of the main elements of the building, highlight which ones are the main elements of the building, which one should always be done, and show you how to do some quick calculations so you can estimate the size of the main elements.